Hello everyone, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu news analysis. So today is 16th June 2024 and we have few important articles for our today's discussion, right? So before discussing all these important articles, yesterday I have given to you one important practice question. The question was with respect to Vishaka guidelines. I've also already told you that these Vishaka guidelines are very important for the examination perspective, both prelims and mains examination perspective. Vishaka guidelines are very important because these Vishaka guidelines were the first attempt from the judiciary to ensure that the protection of women at the workplace from sexual harassment. Right, so the Vishaka guidelines were the guidelines which were given by the judiciary to protect women from the sexual harassment at workplace. So therefore the correct answer for this question is option D, sexual harassment of women at workplace. Now when we talk about this Vishaka case, Vishaka and others versus state of Rajasthan was a 1997 Indian Supreme Court case, right? So it was filed, or the Supreme Court has delivered these set of guidelines for the protection of women from sexual harassment. So that took place in 1997. So where Vishaka and other women group have filed a public interest litigation against the state of Rajasthan and Union of India. So why they have filed this public interest litigation? So to demand enforcement of the fundamental rights of working women under Article 14, Article 19 and Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. Now we all knew that Article 14 of the Indian Constitution talks about right to equality, and Article 19 talks about right to freedom, and Article 21 talks about right to life and personal liberty. So therefore a group of women filed or moved to the Supreme Court to ensure the protection of women at the workplace, and also ensure that the state implements Article 14, Article 19 and Article 14 of the Indian Constitution. Right. So when we talk about these Vishaka guidelines, these were introduced by the Apex Court in 1997, which was evolved into a parliamentary law. So later, after Supreme Court has come up with this Vishaka guidelines, the Parliament has also passed a law in this regard. The law was the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act of 2013. So this act was passed by the Union Parliament. So therefore this Vishaka guidelines are with respect to protection of women from the sexual harassment at the workplace. So today also I have a very important practice question for you. So these type of questions are asked in 2024 prelims examination. So therefore, try to answer this question in the comment section. The question is Meghaduta is a lyric poem composed by who among the following? So option A, Brahmagupta, option B, Bhaskaracharya, option C, Kalidasa, and option D, Chandragupta. Right. So please answer the correct answer in the comment section. Now today we will be starting a discussion with one very important mission, that is Smart Cities mission. So earlier also we have discussed about the Smart Cities mission. Now why this mission was launched? So the government launched this mission in 2015 with the focus of developing the urban infrastructure. So making urban areas livable cities with less pollution, adequate infrastructure, and at the same time taking care of all essential needs in those urban areas. This Smart Cities mission was launched by the Union government. Now why it is in news? So it is in news is because Centre considers extension of Smart Cities mission. Now extension of the deadline for the Smart Cities mission. So under the Smart City mission, the government has decided to develop 100 smart cities across the country, right? So initially the deadline for finishing of the Smart Cities mission in the selected 100 urban centers was 2021. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the government has extended the deadline to 2023. And from 2023 to again the government extended deadline to 2024. So however, recently Union Ministry of Urban Affairs has been saying that around 90% of the smart cities were completed, but 10% of the smart cities yet to be completed. Okay, so there are still 10% of smart cities, they are yet to be completed, and therefore the government has been planning to extend the deadline for smart finishing or completion of the smart cities mission for these 10% of the remaining smart cities. However, in this context, the Parliamentary Committee on Urban Affairs and Urban Development has intervened, and this particular Parliamentary Committee on Urban Development has made a certain recommendations or made certain suggestions that these 10% of the cities which have not completed the targets under the smart cities mission, the remaining works under these remaining smart cities must be done with the funds of the respective state governments rather than center extending the funds, right? So we will understand this in a very detailed and broad manner, right? So with 15 days to go till the mission deadline of June 30. So June 13 is the deadline of the smart cities mission, right? So there is a deadline. So to that particular deadline, we need to complete all the works in selected smart cities, right? So the Union Housing and Urban Affairs Ministry is now considering extending the smart cities mission to allow the cities to complete the ongoing projects, right? So deadline is June 30, but still in number of smart cities the works are still ongoing, the works are not yet completed. Now, which one is the nodal ministry? The nodal ministry is Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Now, this ministry is considering extending the deadline for the ongoing projects in the remaining smart cities. And in fact, as of now, 10% of the smart cities are not yet completed, or works in these 10% of the smart cities are not yet completed. Right, so we will understand what is the smart cities program, when it was launched, and what is the objective of the smart cities program. Now when we talk about the smart cities mission, as I have already told you that it was launched in 2015 June 25. Now what is the key and most important objective of launching this smart cities program or smart cities mission? It wanted to promote cities to provide core infrastructure, right? So in every urban area there is a core infrastructure, so that particular core infrastructure must be improved in all those urban areas. Now whenever we talk about this core infrastructure, the infrastructure related to healthcare, infrastructure related to education, traffic management, technology and mobility, so everything comes under the core infrastructure of the urban centers or core infrastructure of these cities, right? So after that, it also aims at making cities clean and sustainable, making cities environment clean and sustainable, and also give a decent quality of life to their citizens through the application of smart solutions. So these smart solutions will be applied to achieve all these objectives that you are seeing here, right? So smart citizens, smart energy, smart technology, smart buildings, smart healthcare for all the individuals who are living in these smart cities, right? So these are the major objectives. Whenever we talk about the objectives of the smart cities program, these are the major objectives of the smart cities program. Now, so if we go further detail into the smart cities program, so this particular program covers how many cities? It covers around 100 cities. Across the country, it covers 100 cities, and these 100 cities will also be selected through a various rounds of competitions that are actually held from January 2016 to June 2018. And in fact, the selected cities had 5 years from their selection to complete proposed projects. Now within 5 years, in all these selected cities, the project have to be completed. So earlier I've told you already that the original deadline to complete all the projects in these 100 smart cities was 2021, and due to the COVID-19 pandemic the deadline extended to 2023. And since in number of smart cities the projects are not completed, the deadline further extended to June 30, 2024. However, so in fact in 10% of these smart cities is the deadline is not yet completed. Because of that reason, Union Ministry of Urban Affairs and Development has been planning to extend this deadline. Right now, why this particular thing is in news, why smart cities mission is in news, and why Union Ministry of Urban Affairs and Housing planning to extend the smart cities mission, we will try to understand this in a very brief way. Now after the COVID-19 pandemic, what happened? There was a lockdown across the country and even across the world, and this particular COVID-19 pandemic has led to the further extension of the deadline for all 10 smart cities. So earlier the deadline was fixed 2021, and then again this deadline was extended to 2023. So in May last year, the ministry again extended this particular deadline, and this time to June 30, 2024. So this is how the government has been time and again extending the deadline for the completion of smart cities program. Right, so initial 5 years deadline is not met. So initial deadline was 2021, but it is 3 years from the initial deadline. Right, so now since 10% of the total smart cities are not yet completed, now the ministry is also thinking to further extend the deadline. And in fact, as of this week, around 10% of the projects which were worth of around 15,000 crore are still pending in these 10% of the projects or 10% of the smart cities. So therefore the extension or an extension of those cities that still need to complete their projects beyond June 30 was being considered by the government. And if we look into some data and statistics with respect to the smart cities mission, so out of total completed projects, around 5,588 projects worth of 65,996 crore were funded the mission. Okay, so however the remaining are from the city's own resources, the public private mode, and convergence from various other missions and other sources. So this is how the financing of smart cities program or project is being done. Right, so out of the total completed projects, around 5,588 projects were from were funded by the mission itself. However, the remaining funds were met from the city's own resources, the public-private partnership model, and convergence from various other schemes and other resources. They have raised these resources. However, the smart cities program very often ensures a planned development in urban areas. Now, what kind of a planned urban development can be ensured by this smart cities mission? Right, now when we talk about a smart mobility, which is most important component of every urban city or every city, now when we talk about the smart mobility, it should include mixed modal access. Right, and after that the clean and non-motorized option, so that is metro train options and electric vehicles, and also integrated information and communication technology comes part of the smart mobility. And after that we need to talk about the smart people also, 21st century education, inclusive society, and they also embrace creativity as well. So after that we need to talk about smart economy. Now when we talk about the smart economy, it includes entrepreneurship and innovation, productivity, local and global interconnectedness. So all these things are being part of the smart economy, so which is an essential element of the smart cities program. Now after that, green buildings will be constructed, and these green buildings would not consume excess electricity. So these green buildings will ensure electricity efficiency or power efficiency. And apart from that, green energy will be used in an adequate manner, especially the rooftop solar panels are fixed, and urban planning which is green and sustainable in nature. So that is a smart environment which is being created in these urban centers. And after that, there will be smart government, also smart government especially which is driven by e-governance and also information and communication technology, and it also gives a way to transparency and open data accountability, and it will also enable supply and demand size policies. And after that, it will create a culturally vibrant, happy and healthy urban spaces across the country, right? So this is with respect to the smart cities program. So the next a very important topic which is in news is the environmental flows e-flows monitoring system. So this particular system is known as e-flows monitoring system. Now what exactly is this e-flows monitoring system? Now we will understand this in a very detailed manner. Now if you look at the Ganga River is one of the most important and most significant river for us. For example, when we talk about the cultural significance of this river, religious significance of River Ganga, economic significance of this river, and even the livelihoods also, because based on River Ganga there were number of people whose livelihoods directly or indirectly dependent on River Ganga. However, the problem is that River Ganga has been facing a number of challenges. So firstly, pollution is one of the most crucial challenge that River Ganga has been facing. Now what are the reasons for the pollution? For example, industrial effluents is one reason, and apart from industrial effluents, the urban untreated municipal waste, untreated liquid municipal waste, so that is another reason, and agriculture runoff, and even the cultural practices across the River Ganga. So all these factors have been leading to the pollution in River Ganga. So therefore, in order to regularly monitor the pollution levels of River Ganga, the Union government has brought e-flows, environmental flows monitoring system was launched by the Union government. Now we will understand about this e-flows, now why it is in use and what exactly is this e-flows. The Union Jal Shakti Ministry launched an e-flow ecological monitoring system, right? So e-flows ecological monitoring system. Now this e-flows ecological monitoring system actually allows real-time planning and monitoring of projects. River water quality and other key parameters are being allowed, right? Now it is very important that we need to regularly monitor and track the pollution levels in these rivers. Now when we are able to track the pollution levels, then only we will be able to take certain measures, certain actions to reduce the levels of pollution with the with the collaboration from different levels of governance, administration and people and civil society organizations. So therefore, this e-flow ecological monitoring system actually allows the real-time planning and monitoring of projects, river water quality and other key parameters of River Ganga, right? Now we will understand what is this e-flows monitoring system. Now this e-flows monitoring system was developed by National Mission for Clean Ganga. Okay, so this was National Mission for Clean Ganga launched this e-flows monitoring system, and this allows a real-time analysis of the water quality of River Ganga, Yamuna and their important tributaries, right? So this e-flows monitoring system is developed by National Mission for Clean Ganga, and it allows real-time analysis of water quality of Ganga, Yamuna and their tributaries. And in fact, this e-flows monitoring system also allows monitoring of Namami Gange program. Okay, so Namami Gange program was also launched earlier to prevent pollution of River Ganga. So therefore, it allows monitoring of Namami Gange program activities at the central level. So the activities which are part of this Namami Gange program and later monitored by this e-flows monitoring system are monitoring the performance of sewage treatment plants. Now, in every urban areas, located on the banks of River Ganga and other important tributaries of River Ganga, so these sewage treatment plants are established, right? For example, the municipal waste, without directly, it directly flows into the river. Before it directly flows into the river, there will be sewage treatment plants, and these sewage treatment plants treat the urban polluted water before releasing it into the river. And therefore, this e-flows monitoring system will monitor the performance of sewage treatment plants, and it will also ensure that they operate at their highest capacity or their rated capacity. And after that, this Namami Gange program is a flagship program of the Ministry of Jal Shakti, right? So Ministry of Jal Shakti launched this Namami Gange program, and this involved cleaning the river Ganga and now includes its tributaries also. Right. So after that, what is the significance of e-flows monitoring system? We need to understand the significance of the e-flows monitoring system also. Now, when we talk about this e-flows monitoring system, so it actually marks a significant step towards ensuring continuous and sustainable flow of river Ganga. Right. So it ensures continuous and sustainable flow of river Ganga, because that essentially means that it regularly monitors the levels of pollution in river Ganga, and it regularly alerts the necessary agencies and authorities to ensure that these pollutants are not entering into the river Ganga. So therefore, ultimately, it ensures the sustainable flow of river Ganga over a period of time, and at the same time making river Ganga pollution free, and at the same time protecting its aesthetic nature. So this system will track key parameters such as inflow of water into the river Ganga and outflow of river Ganga, and mandated ecological flows across 11 projects along the Ganga mainstream states. Now, when we talk about this Namami Gange Conservation Mission, right? So Namami Gange Conservation Mission, Clean Ganga. So Namami Gange was launched in the year 2014 and 2015 by this present NDA government. So the objective of launching this Namami Gange program was to rejuvenate Ganga and its tributaries with an assured funding of 20,000 crore. So around 20,000 crore rupees were allocated for the rejuvenation and revival of river Ganga, because river Ganga has been facing number of challenges. So the challenges that I have already told you, the most crucial challenge that river Ganga has been facing is pollution. So around 344 projects have been sanctioned at a cost of 29,990 crore. So after that, 147 projects have been completed, and the remaining are under the execution from the government side. Okay. Now, another very important topic, that is a G7 summit. So this G7 summits committed itself for promoting India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, or it is in short known as IMEC, India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. Now, what is this India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor? In earlier classes also we tried to understand this, right? So in fact, it was earlier launched by the countries including India during the G20 summit in the year 2023. Okay. So there was a group called Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Innovation that was launched under the aegis of the G7 summit. So these G7 group of countries have launched this Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Innovation, right? So this India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor is part of the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment. So that is under the G7 group of countries, and the final shape of this India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor was given by the G20 summit in the year 2023. Now we will understand why it is in news, why it was asked, So it was asked because the seven industrialized nations have actually pledged their support to concrete infrastructure initiatives. Recently, we all knew that the G7 summit is being held in Italy, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been invited as the guest of this G7 summit, or India has received invitation from Italy to attend this G7 summit. So therefore, G7 group of countries are industrialized, advanced, developed countries, and they have pledged a concrete support for infrastructure initiatives that this G7 has launched earlier. That includes India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor also. Now, before discussing about this India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, we need to understand about the Middle Corridor. And this is the corridor where there is no India's participation. So India is not part of this middle corridor. Instead, it is connecting China in particular and East Asia in general with the Europe. Right, so you can see the road of this, the route of this middle corridor. It originates in China and goes all the way up to Poland. Right, so this middle corridor, it is officially known as Trans-Caspian International Transport Route. So this is known as Trans-Caspian International Transport Route, and in fact, it is a key logistics and transportation route that actually connects Europe and Asia. So this Trans-Caspian International Transport Route is a key logistical and transportation route that connects Asia with Europe. Okay. Now the middle corridor actually begins in Southeast Asia and China. So it crosses Central Asia through countries such as Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and it reaches Europe via Turkey. Okay. So now the corridor actually involves multimodal transportation, right? So it actually involves a multimodal transportation. So this multimodal transportation includes rail networks, road connectivity, maritime routes across the Caspian Sea. Okay, now you can see the route Central Asia middle corridor. So this is Central Asia middle corridor, and it is connecting China with the Central Asia and then to Europe, right? So this is known as middle corridor, and this middle corridor, if I can repeat again, this middle corridor is also known as Trans-Caspian International Transport Route. So this is known as Caspian International Transport Route. And in fact, it is a key logistics and transportation route that connects Europe and Asia. Now, in fact, this middle corridor begins in the Southeast Asia and in China, and it crosses all the way from Central Asia through countries such as Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and reaches all the way up to Europe. So this particular corridor involves multimodal transportation, including rail networks, road networks, and maritime routes across the Caspian Sea. Now, when we talk about this India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, so it was launched at the sidelines of this G20 summit, as I have already told you. Now, India was the president of G20 summit in the year 2023, and this G20 summit was held in New Delhi, right? So 2023 G7's summit president was India, and this particular summit was held in New Delhi, and this India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor was launched in this G20 summit in September 2023. And in fact, a memorandum of understanding was also signed to develop rail and shipping corridor which is connecting India with Europe. Now you can clearly see how this India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor connecting India with Europe, right? So first it goes all the way from India to UAE, from UAE to Saudi Arabia, and from Saudi Arabia to Mediterranean Sea. So from Israel, and then from Israel to Lebanon, and from Lebanon to Greece. So this is the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, and this corridor actually passes through a number of countries. So it actually passes via number of countries. So those countries including Middle East, Okay, so these corridors including Middle East, within the Middle East, for example, it involves UAE and it involves Saudi Arabia, and it also involves Israel to some extent also. As I've already told you, it starts from India. So from India to United States also involved in this, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, France, Germany, Italy, and European Union. So these are the countries through which India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor actually passes. Now it has been known as the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, IMEC, right? So India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. Now this India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor is a major infrastructure initiative. So this is one of the most important and a major infrastructure initiative that aimed at enhancing connectivity and the economic integration between India and Middle East and Europe. Right. So, when we talk about the connectivity from India to Europe, so there were no connectivity networks as of now to ensure seamless connectivity between India and Europe. Okay, but this India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor certainly a welcome initiative, or it is certainly a welcome step that is being launched by these like-minded countries, because it will ensure the economic integration and it will also significantly improve the connectivity, and countries like India can also achieve the desired levels of supply chain resilience also, because now there is no need to depend on countries like China for our supply chain requirements, right? So it will definitely certainly ensures supply chain resilience. And the other advantage is that when we talk about this European Union countries plus countries in the Middle East, with most of these countries, India has been enjoying the trade surplus or positive trade balance, right? So since we are enjoying the positive trade balance, in order to give a further impetus to the trade and commerce between India, Middle East and Europe, this India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor will significantly help us. Now we will briefly try to understand the significance of India, Middle East and Europe Economic Corridor. India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor and its significance. Now first and foremost, we need to talk about the economic growth aspect. Right now, there is no doubt that this particular corridor first and foremost improves connectivity, right? So it will have a significant implications for connectivity, and secondly, it will also result in economic integration of a number of key countries, and it will ensure supply chain resilience for India, and it will also boost exports from India to other countries, especially the countries in the Middle East and Europe. So therefore, there will be a significant impetus to trade and commerce, right? So that is what India is looking for when we are developing this India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, right? So this corridor will boost trade, and it will also significantly increases investment opportunities in India. Now coupled with number of programs that India has launched to attract investments. For example, recent one being the production linked incentive scheme. So this production linked incentive scheme will also attract large scale investments into India, and attracting large scale investments into India will create a good number of jobs in India, and at the same time it will also give boost to production and exports out of India. So therefore, it will significantly enhance the investment opportunities of to India, and therefore trade and investment together contribute to the economic growth in India, and even the participating countries and the region as a whole. And after that, we need to talk about the strategic connectivity aspect, the strategic connectivity angle also. Now understand that the prominence of India in the Middle East and Europe has been significantly increasing from last 1 decade, right? So all these countries have a common and shared interests, and at the same time these countries are also known as like-minded countries. So therefore this India Middle East Europe economic corridor actually provides India with direct access to these European markets, right? So it will provide direct access to European markets and Middle East by passing the traditional routes. Right, what are these traditional routes? For example, when we talk about these traditional routes from Europe to Mediterranean Sea, from Mediterranean Sea to Suez Canal, from Suez Canal to Red Sea, and from Red Sea to this Arabian Sea, and from Arabian Sea to India. So this is the traditional communication channel between Europe to India. However, recent Red Sea crisis, due to this recent Red Sea crisis, what has been happened? So due to the Red Sea crisis, some vessels have started traveling all the way from Africa, Horn of Africa to India. So it takes a lot of time. Rather, this particular corridor, this is also known as a multimodal corridor. Now what is this multimodal corridor? Now multimodal corridor actually involves rail network, road network, and it also involves the maritime shipping networks. So therefore it is a multimodal corridor, and it is one of the sustainable and most efficient alternative to existing trade routes. And after that, when we talk about India, around 85% of our total energy requirements are met through imports, right? So we are having less fossil fuels. But on the other hand, if you look at India, our energy demands have been significantly increasing day by day. So therefore recently we have increased our imports from Russia, right? So we have imported a lot of crude oil from Russia because of the Russia-Ukraine war and Western countries imposing sanctions on Russia, that led to Russia looking towards India and China. Now we have imported a lot of crude oil from China. Now when we have developed such a corridor which is linking the Middle East, so this will also ensure India's resilience with respect to energy, right? So it will diversify India's energy baskets. Now we have multiple options. For example, when we talk about Russia, this international north-south transport corridor. This international north-south transport corridor will significantly help us to ensure India's access to Central Asia, from Central Asia to Russia and to the larger Eurasia. And apart from that, this India Middle East Europe corridor will also facilitate energy cooperation between India and other Middle East countries. So therefore India will diversify its energy sources by tapping into the Middle Eastern energy supplies. So it will tap into the Middle East energy supplies. However, it is not free from the challenges. There were a number of challenges to this India Middle East Europe economic corridor. Okay, so now when we talk about this India Middle East Europe economic corridor, so there is a political instability also, right? So this political instability is also one of the challenge. For example, recently this Hamas and Israel conflict has led to the instability, volatility in the Middle East. And in fact there were number of militant groups such as Hezbollah from Lebanon, and even Houthis. So these militant groups are very important. Houthis from Yemen. So Houthis were backed by Iran, and from Lebanon, so there were another terrorist group or militant group, so Hezbollah. So both Hezbollah and Houthis are militant groups, and they have created a lot of instability, and they have also created a lot of problems in the Red Sea, and that has actually impacted the global shipping also. So therefore it is also said that the India Middle East Europe economic corridor is also responsible for Hamas attack on Israel, because once this India Middle East Europe economic corridor takes place, then Israel would be integrated with the rest of the region and beyond the region also. So because of that reason, Hamas attacked Israel. So this corridor passes through regions with varying degrees of political instability, particularly in the Middle East. So example being ongoing Israel-Hamas war. And after that, when we talk about this India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, this is in fact a large scale investment project, a large scale project which requires a huge amounts of investment and funding. So therefore, securing adequate funding and investment for such large scale infrastructure project is also one of the significant challenge that they have been facing. And after that, there are also some regulatory and legal issues with respect to this India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, right? So what are those regulatory and legal issues that comes in place? Because this corridor is essentially aimed at promoting trade and commerce across a number of countries. Now each of these countries have their own regulatory and legal frameworks. Now in this context, it is very important that we must harmonize all these regulatory and legal frameworks from India to Middle East and from Middle East to Europe to make sure that this particular corridor works to its full potential. And after that, it is not free from the security concerns. Also, there are a number of security concerns because, as I've already discussed, that these Houthis, Lebanon, Hezbollah terrorist organizations and Hamas militant groups in the Middle East, so very often makes this region a volatile region. And another very important regional player, Iran, has also been very frequently interfering in this region. So therefore, the corridor needs to address the security threats. And the security threats not just from the militancy but also piracy, because when we talk about this Red Sea and Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean, eastern part of Africa, so it has been suffering with a lot of piracy related incidents. And in this piracy, India has been playing a very important and a very crucial role, and terrorism and geopolitical tensions are remaining other important and crucial challenges. Now, what is this Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment that was launched by the G7 group of countries? They are industrialized and developed countries. So at the 2021, now understand this Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment actually, a key player, in launching the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, right? So in fact, this particular corridor was launched under the aegis of Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment. So therefore, at the 2021 G7 summit, the G7 leaders, now the G7 essentially included 7 industrialized developed countries. So they included United States, Canada, and Italy, UK, France, Japan, and Germany. So these are 7 industrialized developed countries which are actually part of the G7 summit. Okay, so they have the G7 group of countries announced their intent to develop a value driven and high impact transparent infrastructure partnership. So in fact, it was to meet the enormous infrastructure needs of low and middle income countries and support the US and its allies. So the economic and national security interests of different countries and including all other developing and middle income countries. So at the 2022 G7 summit, the participating leaders formally announced this Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment. So this is in short also known as PGII. Now this is also considered as an alternative to China's Belt and Road Initiative, right? So China has also launched a Belt and Road Initiative to develop infrastructure projects across the world. Okay, so across different regions where China actually has certain interests. So the next important topic is diphtheria outbreak in Odisha village, right? So recently there was a diphtheria outbreak in Odisha village that led to the death of 5 individuals, right? So 5 children had died in the interior villages in Odisha in a span of 13 days. So this was caused by a diphtheria, and diphtheria is a bacterial diseases, right? So when we talk about the diseases, these diseases are also caused by multiple pathogens. For example, it may be caused by virus, bacteria, fungus, right? So therefore, when we talk about this diphtheria is essentially caused by a bacterial infection. right? When we talk about this diphtheria in an in-depth manner, so it is a contagious bacterial infection. Now what is the contagious bacterial disease? Now contagious means that it could easily spread from one person to the other person, right? So human to human transmission of this infection is possible, so therefore it is a serious and contagious bacterial infection to both nose and throat. Now you can see, so this is how this is being this infection actually impacts the human nose and mouth, right? So what actually causes this diphtheria infection? So it is being caused by strains of bacteria which is being called as Corynebacterium diphtheriae that actually makes a toxin, right? So this Corynebacterium diphtheriae, so that make this toxin, and in fact it can spread from person to person, usually through respiratory droplets like coughing and sneezing. So because it spreads through coughing and sneezing like how COVID-19 virus spreads, so because of that reason it is known as a contagious bacterial infection. And people can also get sick from touching the infected open sores and ulcers also, right? So one thing that you have to understand about diphtheria is a bacterial infection, and this is being caused by a bacterial strain called Corynebacterium diphtheriae. Corynebacterium diphtheriae is a contagious bacterial infection. The other thing that you have to understand about diphtheria is actually treatable because there were vaccines available for treating this disease. And the other thing is that it can spread from person to person, usually through respiratory droplets like coughing and sneezing. Okay, so that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. Please like the video and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you so much.